Chapter 21. Hugo Rune took a dozen rounds to the head. The force lifted him from his feet and drove him back through the window of the Wife's Legs cafe. Hovis turned in horror, tried to run. Bullets raked across his chest, riddled him from head to foot. Somehow, Rune was rising. He came forward, his grey arms outspread, but bullets rained into him, and he fell across the now lifeless body of Inspector Hovis, late of Scotland Yard. When Constable Ken finally released his trigger finger, 23 seconds had passed. 2,300 rounds had left the minigun. The police had run up a bill for £23,000 in damage claims, and the two men lay dead on the pavement. "So long, suckers," said Ken briefly. "Oh my God," he wept. "What have I done?"
"You've done a man's job, sir."
Brian Lytton looked upon all that he had made and found it pleasing. Went Ken onto the Chief Inspector's trousers. A crowd had already begun to form around the two dead men, appearing as if from nowhere. Those who have read the Book of Ultimate Truths will recognise this as spontaneously generated crowd phenomenon. Those who have not will not. The big men who had taken cover when the killing started were now climbing to their feet, dusting themselves down and squaring their shoulders in rugged, manly ways. The wife was already receiving far more comfort than she actually needed. Chief Inspector Brian Bulwer Lytton smiled an evil smile and led the blubbering constable away down the fire escape.
"You chuck up in the car and you're for it," said he, "and you can foot the bill to have my trousers dry cleaned."
Prince Charles was taking tea, but not with the parson this time, with Polly and her mum in their kitchen. He hadn't mentioned to Polly yet about making the phone call to have Hovis reinstated. He thought he'd save that for later. It'd be a nice surprise for her. Polly put the kettle on. She never minded doing it at home. Her mum whispered away at her from behind a tea cosy, imaginatively fashioned to resemble the head of John the Baptist. "You know who he looks like?" she asked Polly. "No," said Polly. "Jeff Beck," said her mum. "He does not." "He does too. My friend Mrs. Murphy played bass for Jeff on Hi-Ho Silver Lining. She showed me this picture. Jeff had more hair then, but the ears the same. Don't you have a meeting of the Chiswick Towns Women's Guild to go to?" Prince Charles made that curious jaw movement that he does when he's feeling lost.
"This is a charming kitchen," he said. "These hygiene units."
"They're pogue and pole," replied Polly's mum, drying her hands on a dishcloth printed with the image from the Turin shroud. "My husband Colin fitted them. They came in a flat pack."
"Were they difficult to erect?"
"Yes, quite. The instructions were in Danish. Happily my husband is cunnilingual."
"The worktops look easy, very easy to wipe down," said the heir to the throne. "Is that a faux marble finish?"
"No, it's formica."
"How interesting," said the prince. Do you have any labour-saving devices?"
"Yes, we have a microwave oven."
Yes."
Prince Charles scratched his ear.
"My friend Mark Knopfler used to sing a song about those, although I forget how it went."
"There you are," whispered Polly's mum behind the Baptist's head. "I know a balding middle-aged ex-muso when I see one." She took herself over to the table and sat down next to the prince. "Are you in the music business yourself, Mr.
Windsor?"
said himself. "Windsor? You're not related to Barbara Windsor by any chance?"
"Barbara?"
The prince adjusted his double-breaster. "Busty Babes, the lovable Cockney Sparrow, star of countless Carry-On films." Charles looked bewildered. He was bewildered. "Would you care for a slice of Black Forest Gatto, Mr. Windsor?" Polly's mum passed the plate.
"Yes, please."
"Mr. Windsor is my new employer," said Polly, bringing over the kettle and warming the pot. "Oh, how nice! And did you say you were in the music industry, Mr. Windsor?"
"Not really."
Prince Charles suddenly seemed to have cake all over himself. "But you do know Mark Knopfler. Do you know anyone else in the biz, as it were?"
"Phil Collins?"
the prince ventured. Not fanciable, Phil. Lovable Cockney sparrow and star of countless Phil Collins films.
And Bob Geldof. Met him once.
Polly's mum smiled at the prince. Excuse me, Mo, she said. Rising from the table, she took Polly by the arm and guided her back to the cooker. He's a real no-mark, this bloke, she whispered. A right name-dropper.
I know the lead singer of Gandhi's Hairdryer.
What? Polly's mum returned to the table. You know Vainglory?
Oh, yes, indeed. We're very good chums. We share a common interest in steam trains.
Get away, said Polly's mum.
Truly,
said the prince. Vainglory, sighed Polly's mum.
Would you like to meet him?
Asked the prince.
Only he sent me some stage passes for his concert tomorrow night. Perhaps you'd like to have them.
He patted at his pockets in search of them, but he only did it for effect because, as those in the know, the royals do not have real pockets, because they never have to carry anything around with them.
They're outside in the Aston Martin,
said Prince Charles.
I'll go and get them.
And so saying, that's just what he did. Polly's mum winked at her daughter. Aston Martin, and he knows Vainglory. You're falling on your feet this time, my girl. This bloke's a goddamn prince. Cornelius had finally done with the telling of his epic tale. He didn't think he'd left anything out. He told of his search for the missing chapters from the Book of Ultimate Truths, and how Arthur Corbould had conned them from him, of his discovery that Hugo Rune was his real father, and that mankind was secretly controlled by a race of non-humans inhabiting the Forbidden Zones, of what happened when he and Tuppe entered one of the zones, of the MacGregor Mathers, and of the time spell and Hugo Rune, and of Hugo Rune's diabolical stratagems. He concluded his soliloquy with words to the effect that, bad as the beings in the zones might be, far worse were the consequences of their sudden exposure to an unsuspecting world, to wit, the complete and utter collapse of civilization as any of them knew it, something that he personally did not want on his conscience. Bollocks just sat there, the joint still there between his fingers. He hadn't even lit it. His mouth hung wide, and his face lacked for an expression. "Is he still breathing?" Tuppe asked. "Only just." Bollocks let out a long, low whistle. "And you two really went through all of that?" "All of that," Tuppe nodded vigorously. "And so, here we are." Bollocks stared into the face of Cornelius Murphy. "You bastard," he said. "You what?" "I said, you bastard. You know that you're the stuff of epics. You get involved in something as incredible as all that. You go through all that you've gone through, and then you quit. You just quit. You bastard. It's far more complicated than you think." "Oh, no, it isn't," said Bollocks. "Oh, yes, it is," replied Cornelius. "Oh, no, it isn't," chorused everyone on board the Happy Bus, for they had all been listening to the tall boy as he told his tale. "I'm sorry," said Cornelius, "but I quit." "Bastard!" Bollocks threw up his hands. "You bastard! Get off our bus!" "No, Bollocks, wait!" Candy dropped down onto the cushions beside Cornelius. "You know you can't quit, really," she said. "You can't quit being who you are, being what you are, and knowing what you know." "I can," said Cornelius, "and I have." "Off!" said Bollocks. "No," said Candy. "Cornelius, listen. You have to go on. See it through to the end. You have to, not just for yourself, but for all of us, for the children." Cornelius looked up at the children. They sat before him in a wide-eyed row. A small one with curly hair blinked back a tear. "Are you going to save us from the bad fairies?" she asked. The tall boy groaned. He really didn't need this. The small child scrambled away, and Candy said, "You have to, Cornelius. You just have to." "I can't. I just can't." The small child returned. Sunlight angling down through the windows cut her golden hair to perfection. She had large tears in her eyes now, and she held in her hands an ocarina. "This is my daddy's," she said. "Will you take it and stop the bad fairies?" Cornelius Murphy buried his face in his hands. All right, I give up. The king was pissed again. It was late afternoon after all, and he was the king.
You do have everything under control now, don't you, Arthur?
Was the question that he asked.
Certainly do.
Arthur availed himself of the royal cakes without being asked.
I have just had a call from a chief inspector of police that we have on our payroll. He informs me that Hugo Rune is no longer a threat to security. You mean his? Very, said Arthur. Shame, said the king. Oh, don't start that all again. Do you know, the king poured himself another drink, sometimes I wonder if it's all really worthwhile, this mucking up of mankind that we do, holding them back, messing them all about.
They would thank you for it if they knew, Arthur unreliably informed his king.
Would they really thank me?
Of course they would. They love you, don't they?
Do they still love me? Really?
They adore you. You still have an enormous following.
Tell me about my following, said the king. Tell me, Arthur.
They still perform the ceremony of the sacred sock.
Do they? Asked the king. What is that, by the way?
Arthur sighed. The sacred ceremony. They pray for you to bestow gifts upon them.
And do they still call me by my name?
Asked the king. Oh, yes, said Arthur Corbould. They still call you good old Father Christmas. The crowd closed in around Cornelius Murphy. There were tears of joy and kisses and smiles and cuddlings and things of that nature generally. Touching, heartwarming, sentimental overkill. Steven Spielberg could not have directed it better. Tuppe, who had in fact directed it, paid off the small golden child with a 50-pence piece. "You done good, kid," said he. "We agreed £1," the child replied, "and 2 for the ocarina." "Just call me good old Father Christmas," said Tuppe.
"Good old Father Christmas,"
said the king. "Good old you," said Arthur Corbould.
"And they still hang up their socks?"
"Yes, as I said, they still hang them up, but you don't put anything in them any more."
"No," said the king.
"I don't."
"Why don't I?"
"Because," said Arthur, "you got fed up with it, and you said, stuff the lot of them, it's my birthday, and it's my magic birthday spell, and I'm going to use it, having a good time, the parents can fill up their kids' stockings themselves."
"I said that."
"You did. And at the end you said, so there, and you stuck out your tongue. I remember that quite well."
"Stuck out my tongue?"
"And said, so there."
"I did that?"
"You know you did. The special birthday spell was formulated so you could travel all around the world on the eve of your birthday, dispensing joy and goodwill and presents, before 1 second of real time had passed."
"So that's how I did it. I always wondered."
"That's how you did it, but you don't do it any more."
"Because that other bloke stole my birthday,"
said the king in a sulky voice. "That other bloke? Jesus, you mean? You can't even bring yourself to say his name."
"He ripped me off,"
Father Christmas complained.
"just because he was born on my birthday. He even named himself after me. Jesus Christmas. Doesn't sound right anyway."
"I have tried to explain to you about him before," said Arthur. "I don't know why you get so worked up. You're both gods, aren't you? In as many words, and as near as makes no odds. But you're a far more popular god than him, really."
"Am I?"
said King Christmas. "Of course you are. I keep telling you, Christmas Day. Which god would you choose if you were a kiddie? The squalling brat in the manger who's getting all the presents, or the jolly red-faced man with a nice white beard who's bringing you presents?"
"I know which one I'd choose," said the king.
"And me," said Arthur.
"So do you think I should use my special spell to bring joy and goodwill and presents once more to the world of men?"
"No," said Arthur. "Stuff the bastards is what I say."
"My opinion entirely,"
the king agreed.
"I'm the governor. I'm in charge, and I'll run the world my way."
"Quite so," said Arthur. "You do it your way."
"I will,"
said the king.
"And Arthur, as you have done so well, I'm going to promote you.
From now on, you're my chief of security.
Oh, goody gumdrops,
said Arthur Corbould through gritted teeth.
And I want a bit of peace and quiet, Arthur. No more horrible humans stealing my cars. No one trying to bring down my kingdom. You take care of that for me, and we shall live happily ever after. Is this Murphy creature going to be a problem?
Arthur shook his head.
Not unless he manages to raise an army against us, and I can't see where he'd get one of those from. Can you?